Basically, it's a tournament where all the best players in the world from different countries and everything come in the same room and play the game that we all love.
I am Jace Allaer.
And I am Stoneforge Mystic.
It's just a really amazing game.
That's just mind-boggling to even think about.
I guess the rest is history.
Hello, I'm Rick Allaer. I have in front of me my blue-white blade deck. Basically, this deck is trying to put a bunch of threats in play, back it up with counter magic, use tempo plays to gain advantage when like that. Main cards are Feast and Famine. Angelic Destiny plays a similar role, and Hero Bladehold and efficient threats like that, and Bladesplicer plus counter magic and Snapcaster help back it up. My deck runs 26 lands, including 4 Inkmoth Nexus and 1 Moorland Haunt. There's 12 creatures total, 4 Hero Bladehold, 4 Bladesplicer, 4 Snapcaster Mage. Spells are 2 Gideon Jura, 2 Angelic Destiny, 2 Sword of Feast and Famine, 3 Oblivion Ring, 4 Mana Leak, 2 Gitaxian Probe, 2 Disperse, 2 Timely Reinforcements, and 3 Dismembers. This deck doesn't have very many 2-weak matchups. In my experience, the weakest matchup that it's got is green-white tokens, and that's because they crowd the board better than you. And then they play planeswalkers too, so you can't deal with everything, just creatures and stuff. The strong matchups though, I mean, honestly, Wolf Run Ramp, both versions with Slagstorm and Dungrove, this deck is just completely just demolishes. You have other sort of control blue-black control straight up is not amazing for you, but if you're playing against stuff like Solar Flare, it's usually really easy to win. If you're playing against blue-white control, decks with O-rings, any deck that's trying to get to late game and is not trying to outclass you in the first couple turns in the game are usually good matchups for this deck. The main cards that win games are, Hero Bladehold unanswered, wins very quickly. Sword of Feast and Famine is one of your signature cards. When you get that in play and start connecting, usually you win the game. Gideon's a nice all-around cleanup. He's very rarely weak. He's very powerful for 5 mana. Inkmoth Nexus actually gets a lot of games as well because, some games go long enough. Snapcaster gives you tons of tempo advantage, card advantage that you need. He doesn't straight up win games on his own, but he gives you lots of incremental advantages that really add up. And Angelic Destinies are kind of there, not because the card itself is super good, but in the metagame right now where you're trying to essentially beat them before they play Primeval, beat them before they play, Sun Titan into double Phantasmal, things like that. Angelic Destiny lets you turn anything you've got in play into like a 2 or 3 turn clock. And if they kill it, then you get the Angelic Destiny back, you can try again. And if they don't kill it, then you can just play control and from then on win. Basically, this deck can take either the role of control or aggro. It depends on the matchup. Usually, you're trying to lay down as many threats as you can. If any of them stick, then you're usually in a good position. A lot of the formats spot removal right now, and so if they kill your Hero Bladehold, that's fine. I mean, it sucks, but the tempo you lose isn't that bad because this deck's playing so much tempo gain anyway with Snapcaster, Dismember, Disperse, things like that. And you usually go over the top with stuff like Feast and Famine, Gideon Jura, Angelic Destiny, and that's what helps you win games quick or win games later on in the game. But overall, you're playing a tempo-based game where you play a threat. If they don't actually kill it, then you're dealing with the rest of their threats while it gets through, especially with Hero Bladehold. Geist of St. Traff is actually, he's good right now, but I'd rather be able to play Bladesplicer right now. It's a little easier on the mana. 2 bodies in 1 is good. Like I said, a lot of spot removal. Against red, you clog the board. You just want to put stuff in play, and then you can build up from there. Geist of St. Traff is really good with Angelic Destiny, but his counterpart, the other card that would be similar in how it works, Mirran Crusader, I do have in my sideboard because I think the ability to outrace your opponent is incredibly important. But there's a lot of stuff on the ground these days, Viridian Emissaries, things like that. And guys, while being good, is probably better with just all-around Bladesplicer in the main deck. Basically, Oblivion Ring is good in and of itself. Disperse, the way it interacts with O-Ring, It's actually pretty good. If you already have O-Ring in play and it's got something removed, then you can disperse it and protect the O-Ring from the acidic slime or whatever. It's been pretty sweet. But on the other hand, if you actually have 5 mana and you have the O-Ring and the Disperse in your hand, if your opponent has anything that you're going to O-Ring anyway, you can play the O-Ring, wait for the trigger that targets it to go on the stack, then disperse the O-Ring, return it to your hand, and the way that it all ends up working out is their thing is permanently removed. You've traded a Disperse for an O-Ring, you have another O-Ring in your hand. Now if they play anything else you care about, you can remove it next turn. My sideboard contains 1 Celestial Purge, 1 Day of Judgment, 1 Batterskull, which I bring in actually a lot against control and aggro, especially against tokens. It's really good. 2 Flashfreeze, 2 Surgical Extractions, which are good to bring in against any draw-go type deck, as well as Solar Flare. 3 Mirran Crusaders, which are excellent against both Black Infect, as well as the Wolf-Run Ramp decks, as well as Blue-Black Control. They're actually a really strong card against every non-red removal deck. 1 Revoke Existence, 1 Phantasmal Image, 2 Spellskites, excellent against aggro, still good against Wolf-Run Ramp, and 1 Sword of War and Peace. For me, I don't think people give this deck quite enough respect. On paper, it looks good against the metagame. And then when you play it, test it out, you start learning the interactions. You start learning which hands are keepers, what you need to do in each matchup. There's a lot of room for growth in this deck, and there's a lot of different versions out there, but the more you play it, the more you realize that it's really good against a lot of decks. And while there are some weaknesses, and you can lose any game of Magic, there's really a lot more games where you take control of and your opponent can't really do much about it. They're searching for answers. But on top of that, I honestly think that this is a deck where, you basically, if someone gives you this list, or you take it to an F&M or whatever, you'll do probably pretty well, but there's a lot of things you can learn by testing, especially if you know which hands to mulligan, which ones to keep, whether to drop the sword or whether to drop the Bladesplicer or whatever. There's a lot of different decisions that, while seemingly little at the time, make a big difference in the matchup. So if you know how to play the deck, on top of being at least good at Magic, then you'll get a lot of good victories that way.
Grasp of Darkness is 2 black mana for an instant to give target creature -4/-4 until end of turn.